And what comes next? There's one thing is to live in a quiet place. What else? In both the Eightfold Path and the Hachidai Ningaku, you have wisdom, you have concentration, jo, or concentration and the mindfulness, nen and jo. How are they different in it? Yeah, but you kind of the vipassana aspect and the samatha aspect, samadhi and mindfulness, and in the end comes with the Eightfold Path. It's pretty straightforward: right thinking, right view, right livelihood, right speech, right livelihood, right efforts, right intention, and then in the end, right.
First one is actually to understand the Fourfold Truth.
Huh?
First one is to understand the Fourfold Truth.
So that's right thinking, I guess. Yeah, right thinking, right view. So that's basically wisdom, and it comes first here. Often it's last. First you have the precepts, then you have meditation, then you have the wisdom. And in the Eightfold Path, first you have the wisdom, right view, right thinking. Then you have these four: right speech, right intention, right effort, right livelihood, that are kind of the precept, practice, daily life aspect. And last you have the meditation aspect, right mindfulness, right samadhi. And in the 8 awarenesses of great persons, at first you have these things that are more like livelihoods. No great desire, knowing you have enough, living in a quiet place. Then you have this meditation, making an effort, never be mindless. Then the funny thing is in the 8th, the last one, after wisdom, there's something that is sometimes translated as do not engage in idle talk. And one would ask, why does somebody come with idle talk in the end when there's already everything is covered in idle talk? And personally, I understand this as do not stop at theory, stop with theory. But so step 8 after wisdom is now it's time for practice. Stop talking, stop thinking, stop discussing. Now practice. And in a way, so although you don't hear about the Eightfold Path, that's Dogen Zenji ends the Shobogen, the last chapter is this Hachidai Ningaku. And in a way that's his replacement for the Eightfold Path. And there's many similarities. One difference is that in the end there's this, we don't talk theory here, but this is about practice. There's a proper practice. That's also then a connection to the Tenzokyokun again. It's about what we actually do. So Hachidai Ningaku also, it's not a ladder that we climb up to get rid out of the suffering and sneak into nirvana, but it's about how we live in the community together with people.
English, you speak open mind.
Yes.
How to get connected with open mind in the social life?
How to connect?
To stay connected. To stay connected with open mind after 1 hour of Zazen morning, and go to the social life and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just like with the Zen. How can you have a quiet mind during the Zen? Because there's one thought, you let it go, there's another thought, you let it go, another thought, you let it go. Basically you can just only return to the Zen again. Return to that basic mind that is present, and there's a disturbance, a little disturbance here, another illusion there, you let it go, and it continues, and sometimes maybe just like with the sheep and the shepherd, sometimes the sheep quiet down by themselves if you just be the meadow. That's also maybe an example for the Tenzo. You just, as a meadow, you're there for the sheep. You just let the sheep feed. The meadow doesn't ask the sheep, what do you give back? anyway, also in daily life, you try to be that. sorry, I make it more complicated than it is.
It actually fits pretty nice.
Yeah, that's why I said it. but anyway, like, yeah, open mind in daily life. Like with me, I go back to my wife and my children, and just because I'm a Zen master doesn't mean I'm always harmony, but we quarrel, and there's trouble in the family, and I have to also remind myself of open mind. I have to get back to it, and next day I already forgotten. So it's always getting back to it, getting back. At least from my experience, there's no final solution, final satori, and then you have open mind forever, joyful mind forever, parental mind forever, but rather it's a constant process, getting back to it, getting back.
Yeah, in connection to this, you often get the impression that Buddha is pictured exactly as someone
Yes.
who reached this level that it's non-stop, awakened, enlightened. How do you comment on that?
Maybe I haven't met him. We know only through documents that were written much later through the eyes of people who, of course, made this big, perfect person. So maybe he was that perfect person. Maybe he was kind of beautified later. But I mean, even in the sutra, you find that when the sutra, the Buddha gave a talk, and there were hundreds of people that left in disgust, for example. So even the Buddha didn't strike a perfect connection with everybody. So he had people who criticized them. He met with resistance. People say that the food that he ate when he died, it was poisoned. We don't know why it was poisoned, but whatever. He met also with suffering. So I don't think that the Buddha, every time he was living in this perfect blissful state. Maybe he was, or probably he was on a much higher level than we. Who knows? But also it's useless to compare that. Buddha was maybe here and I'm still here, and maybe in 10 years I'm going to be a little bit closer. How I'm going to make this comparison? That would be stupid. We can only practice our lives right now. But I personally, I don't think that Buddha was perfect as a human being. I think he was, as a human being, he had his faults, of course. I don't expect that.
Continue to practice.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, people say the Buddha, like look at the Buddha there, he's still sitting. He's still practicing, yeah. He doesn't stop, yeah.
Well, that was fascinating about the Tenzokyokun.
Yeah.
It talks from Zazen,
Yes.
and it's like it's Dogen's biography out of Zazen,
Yeah.
and that it returns to Zazen again.
Yes.
So you can say maybe the Buddha doesn't speak about out of bliss, but out of truth. He knows
Of course, yeah.
the bliss is because he knows I speak truth.
Yeah, it's a side effect, yeah. Yeah. Of course. Often people, they only go for the bliss and they think that it's the main effect, and that's why they miss it.
But logically, if it's true, if everything is Buddha nature,
Yeah.
then it cannot be that this is a mistake, this state we're in.
Yeah.
That's just not logic. Then, like, okay, we're Buddha nature, but somehow we got messed up
Yeah.
as a mistake.
Yeah.
So logically, it must be that we somehow choose for this path to experience again what it is to realize our Buddha nature. I guess to realize our Buddha nature, we have to lose it. It's fun finding it back. Well, that's
Yeah, I don't know if I understand, but maybe, yeah. I don't understand, but maybe it's logic, yeah.
You really didn't understand?
You say, well, okay, we all have Buddha nature, but somehow we're in this situation which seems to be a little bit apart from Buddha nature. It can't be a mistake.
Yeah, that's my logic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It cannot be that we fell from grace.
Yeah.
Logically, I think it's not a bad state we're in. It's not.
No.
Because it is, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
To realize our Buddha nature.
Yes. Of course.
As hard as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I can understand that. Yeah.
Why is there not so much talking? I never hear in talks about guilt in Buddhism. Can you comment on that? Does it have a place in Buddhism, guilt?
About what?
Guilt.
Yes. Because in Christianity, okay, guilt and suffering all together. But you never hear about guilt in Buddhism, but suffering a lot.
Yeah, you don't hear much in Buddhism about guilt. What you hear a lot about is illusion or delusion, being lost. Like Christianity starts with guilt. That's where the whole story starts. While in Buddhism it starts with delusion, that we don't see reality as it is. We don't realize ourselves as we are. We think we have a substance. We think things should be permanent. And in Buddhism that's not called guilt, that's just ignorance. It's ignorance. It's not good or bad, that's just our reality. But we can change that if we open our eyes, waking up. And Buddha basically means somebody who's woken up. So in Buddhism there's not much talk about good or bad or guilt.
Karma. Bad karma.
There's bad karma, yeah, that's the whole Hindu background. And bad karma leads to bad next life, good karma leads to good next life. But then Buddhism is not about where we go in the next life. It's wherever we go, we should practice as bodhisattvas. So if I go to hell next life or to heaven next life, that's not of importance. What is important is what I do there. If I continue to live as a bodhisattva or I just get streamed away by karma. Because as Dogen Zenji says, well, good karma can at best get you to heaven. But if you went to heaven, you cannot be the Tenzo. You can't do the Zen. There's no session in heaven. Because there's no suffering in heaven. So you should be happy that you have bad karma and were predestined to get here to the session, because thus you get a connection with the Buddha way.
So there's heaven and hell. Heaven and hell is there is in Buddhism as well as in Catholics, for example. Have God for them in heaven.
Yeah, but the big difference is in heaven and in Christianity you have this life. You don't know what came for the life. It's not so interesting. After life, you have eternal heaven or eternal hell. While in Buddhism, and basically it's not Buddhist, but it's the whole Hinduistic thought, if you have a chain of lifetimes, and you can be born as a human being, but you can also be born in heaven or in hell for time. 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, but it's never eternal. And if you do good in hell, for example, next you can be born as an animal. And if you progress as an animal, next you can be born as a human being again. And if you progress...
So human being stands above animal?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's also angry demons. Usually they're below the humans. Usually human beings come second place after heaven. And then you can also go to heaven. If you make good karma, you make a big contribution to the Buddhist temple, you buy a Porsche for the Buddhist priest, and then you go to heaven. but what for? Next, in heaven, you enjoy yourself for 1,000 years and you go to hell again. So that's also one reason maybe why in Buddhism guilt and doing good and bad is not so important. It's more about having these three minds. What happens to me is not important at all. I ask myself, how can I help other beings to be liberated? That means to open their eyes to reality. That's the question.
Yeah. how is that related to Satori, the experience of Satori?
What do you mean with the experience?
Yeah. Feeling.
Like I was talking about the attitude of Satori, and that's exactly what I think is the attitude of Satori. What I just said.
You don't think it's a state of being?
It's a way of living. It's a way of living. And one example is the Tenzo. And there might be some kind of experiences or feelings related to it, like the feeling of joy that you sometimes have. But when you cling to this, I'm so happy that I'm alive now, and I experienced this now. I experienced it during the third setting of the first day on the Zafu. That's my Satori. Once you cling to that, it's already gone. So of course these experiences exist. And some people make a lot of fuss about it, but they are not so interesting, and even when you try to grasp them, they are also impermanent. Buddhism teaches everything is impermanent. Satori experiences are impermanent as well. Or Uchiyama Roshi said you can't put them into the refrigerator. They're good only when they're fresh, but they don't keep until the next day. Just like with food. So of course there's Satori experiences, but yeah. The question is, what do I do as a Tenzo with this? How do I make food tomorrow and day after tomorrow? I can't serve this yesterday's Satori experience.
How do you see the use of the koan system then? Rinzai? They seem to make a lot of getting to get your experiences.
Yeah, there's lots of different schools and different styles, I think. So I experienced it in Tofukuji in Kyoto, in the traditional Rinzai monastery. But in the West, often you have the Sambo Kyodan, which is originally Soto, but they put the koan system in there. And I have the feeling it's a little bit different there. But what I experienced in Tofukuji was, to my surprise, the first koan, very soon I passed. And then the next, very soon. Each koan, well, I don't know, I spent there 10 months and that 125 koans in 10 months. To my surprise, I never had a Satori experience. But then it was interesting for me because I always had this idea, there must be something big, something hidden. You have this, you pass the koan and there's some big revelation. It's only between you and the master, and there's something secret going on there in the Dokusan room. And so that helped me. It helped me let go of this idea. There's something mystical. There's nothing mystical. Each koan has a point. The point is just being one with a certain aspect of the koan. Like there's this one koan. How do you drive a car in a sparrow's nest? And there's no way to drive a car in a sparrow nest. It's too small. So, but that's what all koans are about. When you think about it, there's no logic. So you just have to manifest. In this case, either the sparrow's nest or driving the car. And sparrow's nest is not so interesting. So in Rinzai especially, it's about movement, action. So you manifest the movement. And there was a guy from Holland actually who was here last 2 years ago, Ron. Maybe I told the story. I think I told the story at that time. Like, he had problems with this koan, so he asked me. I passed it pretty quick, and you're not supposed to talk about it, but everybody during coffee break we chat about it. he said, you know that thing with the sparrows. And, oh, okay, yeah, simple koan, isn't it? No, so 5 times I still haven't passed it. So what was your answer? And said, and so what did the Roshi said? The Roshi said the car isn't moving. Okay, so next try. He did and then he gave up the idea with the car, so he made this. So he was kind of a sparrow's egg in the nest. Basically, what you need, it's just a little bit more. You jump up and you run around in the room, and that's it. That's it. So with each koan, you just manifest what is the main aspect in that thing. And in a way that can help, or to let go all of these ideas, there's something mystical. You just, in each situation, and become one with it. But then that's useless if you stop in the Dogen room. After you get out, now I got another koan. Usually you get a list of 10. Roshi gives us this list, and then you cross it off, next koan on the list, and then you get the next list. If you practice like that, it's useless. The point is when you're the Tenzo, for example, you cook a soup, you just 100% cook that soup. And if you practice in that way, then koans can be a hint. Sometimes, what is my koan right now? Oh, I'm cooking a soup, so 100% I forget about everything else, or better, I have everything else in mind while I do the soup, in connection with everything else. I'm 100% there, just as you manifest that car. And apart from that, there's nothing mystical, there's nothing behind being the Tenzo, and while you're doing the soup, there's nothing mystical happening there, but that's your job. Or when you go to the toilet, 100%, well, there's koans like that too. Who of the 8 dragon gods lets the rain fall? There's these gods. There's also gods in Buddhism, by the way, but they're just one level higher than the human beings. They are living in heaven, so they are also, how do you say? They're mortal. They are not eternal. Anyway, so there's these 8 dragon gods, and their responsibility is to let rain fall. And the koan is which of the 8 dragon gods let the rain fall. So, as most of the koan is all about you, so you have to let rain fall. So, first try is you, how do you say in English? Regenkanne, we say in German. Yeah, well, whatever, you have this thing, so you make a kind of pantomime, like I'm watering the garden, and that of course is not good enough. So, or you put an umbrella, that's not good enough. So in the end you pee. Yeah. That's kind of the typical koan answer.